Hey, what's up, guys? I'm outside today, so hope you can hear me okay. If not, then next step I have to figure out how these microphone things work. So I'm in the park today, or as they say, in the wilderness. But to jump right into today's discussion, I want to talk about. So there will be slight distractions in this video because there's like turtles, iguanas, lizards out here, possibly snakes as well. So if I turn my attention away just for a moment, I promise you it's because there's a legitimate distraction, or at least the sound of a potential distraction. But of course, I'm gonna be sharing with you some of the views, like this bridge here. So if you see that, it's pretty dope. Little canalway, both sides. Very calm, peaceful, breezy, feels good. But I want to talk today a little bit different subject or conversation. I want to talk about how do you decide to get out of the military, or how do you know whether separating is the right decision for you? I know there's a lot of people serving right now. I think just a rough estimate is probably about 1 million members on active duty, maybe a little bit over 1 million. I think when I was in, I think the Navy had something like 400,000 active duty. I think Air Force was around 200,000 or 300,000. Then you had Marines got a couple 100,000. Army probably have the most. And then Coast Guard is Department of Defense, so they're not really considered. Not Department of Defense. Coast Guard is Homeland Security. Yeah, different umbrella for Coast Guard. So, but they're still considered active duty when they're serving. So I'm pretty sure they still have a form of separation or retirement, that's very similar to the other branches of the military as well. So, let's see, where do I start? So I did nine years and a couple of months in the Navy, and served as a nuclear operator, nuclear trained mechanic on board submarines. I was trained for that, and that's where I served. The USS Scranton out of Norfolk, Virginia. And then my last duty station was Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. So I ended up spending a decade in Hawaii. Once I separated, I stayed in Hawaii an additional, I got there 2013, separated 2016. So I stayed there an extra seven plus years after separating from the military. So I'll give you a little bit of my story. And then I'll share with you some lessons I've learned since being a civilian that I think may help you in your decision as to whether retirement in the military is best for you, or whether you should separate and go pursue your dreams, or maybe even retirement in the military may not be your dream, but it still may be what's best for you. But for others, it may not be the case. And so I'll explain that after sharing my journey, because that's what I'm based it off of. And of course, obviously observations from others and my interactions with others as well. So I try to give you all the background necessary without going too in depth. So let's say I'm from South Carolina, right? The country, more or less. Columbia. It's not ranches and farms everywhere. It's not that type of country, but it's just a slower pace of living compared to, let's say, like a New York City or a Miami or even Honolulu. It's just a much slower pace of living, right? You can still park on the street, parallel park. The meters go out at 6 p.m., right? They don't run on Saturdays or Sundays. So, and then also, there's just not much development in the sense of economic opportunity, right? So there's not a ton of skyscrapers in the sky, right, where there's condominiums being built. There is a lot of home development, because I would say it's more of like a retirement place, right? It's where people basically come to die, they get old, they retire, and it's a place that has a much lower cost of living compared to other parts of America, but it's still nice, right? It's not like rural Mississippi, right? It's not that bad, but it's just not expensive as, say, maybe like Atlanta or Charlotte, right? But it's still got some decent amenities. So anyways, coming from that, when I joined the military in 2007, right? So to put that in perspective for you, YouTube didn't exist. Facebook was like brand new. You still had to have a college email address to get on Facebook, right? Twitter didn't exist. X obviously didn't exist. The iPhone had not been invented yet. It was just the iPod was out, but the iPhone had not yet been invented. I think it was still a few more years before the iPad was even created or invented, right? Cell phones at that time, they just did not have what we have today. Like, you could make phone calls. I think you could send text messages at that time, and maybe a small picture, but definitely not videos, I don't think. And surfing the internet on your phone was just not a thing yet. I mean, I think you could go to Google, but it was just so slow that it wasn't even worth your time trying to go on the internet. But if you wanted to, you could go on the internet and maybe check your email, right? But it was just a very slow process, right? So it's kind of giving you context as to what it was like back then, right? There was no social media, right? Instagram didn't exist, all these things, so none of that existed. So the circulation of, as you could say, information was limited. Blogs were kind of the main way that you got information, I guess you could say, outside of like an encyclopedia, dictionary or something, right? You had to get information from a blog, and blogs were really popping back then. So I say all that to say that for me, when I joined, the only thing I was aware of as ways to make money was you either went to college, got a 4-year degree or a master's, and got a job. You joined the military, or you became a fireman, policeman, and that was it. That was basically your only options if you wanted to provide for yourself, right? So there's no such thing as being a media star. There's no such thing as it existed, but I wasn't aware of it. Public speaking, right? Starting your own business, that was never something that ever crossed my mind. Sales, like being a car salesman, a real estate agent, insurance, all these different sales opportunities that you have, never even knew existed. Network marketing, no clue. So literally all I thought was you could either be in the military, you can go to college, get a degree, or you can become a policeman and fireman, and that's how you be able to take care of yourself and have a decent living, right? And obviously, we all know entertainment in the form of athletics, right? So you can join the, NFL, NBA, make a lot of money. But of course, as we all know, by the time you hit high school, most of those guys are easily identifiable if they even have an opportunity, right? Meaning that colleges are beating down your door and saying, hey, come play for us, right? So if you don't have that in high school, then you can more or less assume that the NFL or the NBA is not going to be an opportunity for you, right? So it was very clear to me in high school that I was not the guy that was going to make it big in the pros, right? So there's no colleges beating down my door to play football. So that door was already shut. So that left me with going to college and being in the Navy. Now, I went to college, but as old folks say, I didn't get my lesson, So Spent a lot of time at school, but I wasn't in class, right? I was just enjoying being a college student, right? But not actually there for what you're intended to be there for, which is academics. So that left me with grades that reflected. And so, like a lot of people in America that, I have a different opinion on, I was offered student loans. They said, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. You can get these student loans. And check out this little ass behind us. Pretty cool. So, but yeah, they offered me student loans just like they did everyone else. And my first thought was, you know what? How the heck am I gonna pay for this? Like, I don't have $100,000 sitting in the bank. I don't have $50,000 sitting in the bank. And you're like, oh, don't worry about it. You'll get a good job and whatever. And I'm like, how do you know? I mean, how do you know what the world's gonna be like 4 years from now? Can you guarantee me a job 4 years from now that's gonna pay me $50,000, $60,000 once I get this degree? No, but it's more than likely because you're in, I think that time it was information technology. So I was an IT major. So they're like, yeah, there's going to be jobs, they're going to hire you. They're going to pay you $50,000, $60,000. You're going to pay this loan off, no problem. I'm like, yeah, but you can't promise me that I'm going to make that much. And who's going to hire me? What company? Would they sign a contract right now? That was my response. So obviously the answers were no. They couldn't promise me the income. No, they couldn't promise me the job. And so therefore to me, taking the student loan was a bad deal. So I wish more Americans would have that same philosophy. We wouldn't have people crying about not being able to pay off their student loans now, right? But for me, that was my personal take. I was like, nah, I can't afford that. So therefore I can't afford school anymore. So with that eliminated college because again, I didn't get my classes. So my scholarship was gone. And that left me with either joining the military or being a policeman or a fireman. And well, my father was a retired military guy, 25 years, Vietnam vet. And I mean, it's crazy to think about, but there's some of you that are young enough nowadays, you don't even realize, or you have never been taught about the history of America. So in the 1960s, there was a Vietnam War. Before that, there was a Korean War. And there was also, before that, there was World War II and World War I. So these are actual wars. And I would say within the next 5 to 10 years, the last of the Americans that were alive that actually participated in those wars will be passing on. My father was one of those people that passed on last year. But, and again, anyways, that was a war I fought in America. Or not in America, but fought by Americans in Vietnam. And so he was a veteran of that war. He was there for over 3 years. So what that left me was, being his son, was I saw what retired military was like, but he also bought a house where he used to serve, meaning he used to serve in, how do I say it? He used to serve in Fort Jackson, yeah, which is basically Colombia. It's a military base in Colombia, and he used to serve there. And so he bought a house, and when he retired, he kept the same house. And so I grew up around other active duty military, even though my father was retired. So my awareness, my environment, all I saw was active duty military. And with that, and obviously my dad's friends, retired military. So my whole exposure up until that point in time was military. So everyone I knew, they weren't rich per se, but they weren't poor, meaning they had a place to stay, meaning they had a house, they had a couple of cars, Ford Mustang, Chevy, Camaro, Ford Ranger type truck, right? And so they had vehicles, right? It wasn't Mercedes-Benzes or BMWs, but they had nice new cars, decent home, and they could put food on the table. And so for me, it was like, hey, if you join the military, you're never going to be rich, but you'll be able to provide for yourself, be able to take care of yourself, be able to provide for your family. And that's what I knew. And so I felt comfortable joining the military. one of the things about it, excuse me for a second. So one of the things about it was that my father, having been in the Army, he begged me not to join the Army. He said, please don't go. So I said, okay, I won't join the Army. I tried joining the Air Force. And when I say try, I mean I went to the recruiter station multiple times, and it was closed. Later on, I found out why. Is because, the Air Force lifestyle is about as comfortable and plush of a lifestyle as you can get in any branch of service, bar none. I mean, it's a very comfy, plush living. And so therefore, people don't get out. People just retire at very low ranks because it's a very nice lifestyle, to say the least. So they don't have any problem with retention. They don't have any problem with people staying because it's a very plush lifestyle. They don't really work their guys too hard. They don't really push them too hard. I mean, obviously pilots might be a different scenario, but that's just one segment of the Air Force. But for everyone else, it's pretty chill, very chill. Even to the point that I'll give you an example. The Air Force, if their airmen have to stay in Army, Navy, housing, or barracks, they get a extra special pay called substandard living allowance. Yeah, that's right, substandard living, meaning the barracks that the Army, Navy, Marines that they stay in, it's substandard for Air Force. So that just gives you an idea of the difference. So anyways, that is why there was no one at the recruiting office, because they don't have to recruit. If anything, they got to kick people out because they won't get out, right? So they have no problem with retention. So that's why there was no one at the recruiter's office, because they didn't need to recruit, right? So Navy, on the other hand, it looked like a party in there, right? So I knew Marines. I wasn't going on the Marines. I knew they were kind of frontline combat people, and so I was like, nah, I don't really want to be on the front lines, of combat. So, hey, how's it going? So I was like, no, that's not going to work for me. So that just kind of left the Navy, right? It was Navy, Air Force, nobody was there. Went multiple times, so I was like, well, I guess Navy it is. Hello. So with that, went to the Navy, recruiter, joined. Well, fast forward, let's say maybe about 4.5, 5 years in, because of my rate, because of my job being a nuke, I got a lot of money thrown at me at a very young age. I wasn't really ready for it. In hindsight, I shouldn't have re-enlisted, but I did. At my 2-year mark, I re-enlisted for $90,000 tax-free, which is, being a country boy from South Carolina, I had never seen that type of money in my life. Somebody's going to pay me, $45,000 tax-free and then, pay me $30,000 a year. These numbers sound so small to me now. But at that time, you understand, I was coming from Columbia, South Carolina, So for me, having $1,000 in the bank was a lot of money, back then. Minimum wage, I think, was $5.15. I worked at McDonald's, making $5.15. I worked at Target. I think making $5.75 or $6 an hour, something like that, So for me to make $30,000 a year, that was a lot of money, and granted, you're in the military, so your housing's taken care of at that low of a rank, and they provide food. So really, you only have to pay for your car and your cell phone. So you're talking about, I don't know, what, $1,500 or $1,200 every 2 weeks, something like that, It was a lot of money to me back then, So I re-enlisted, added on another 6 years to my contract, which really meant I was adding on 2. My original contract was 6 years, but they add on another 6 from the time you re-enlist. So instead of serving for 6 years, you serve for 8 years, right? And that's what the bonus was, and the automatic promotion. So for me, it was a deal that I was not able to say no to, but in hindsight, I should have said no to if I should have even joined the military in the first place. But, I did the best I could. So with that, about, I say 3-4 years in, I started looking around and I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing. I mean, I imagine that most of you can relate to that. Being in the military, you do not necessarily love your job. If you love your job, you wouldn't be watching this video, right? Or considering it. Or you just may see some of the pitfalls or some of the cost of being in the service, and you may say it may not be worth it still, even though you love it, right? So anyways, I was a disgruntled sailor, if you will. I don't know that I was angry at the world because, I knew I had signed up, but I just didn't enjoy what I was doing. I didn't enjoy my job, didn't necessarily like all the people I work with. Most of the people I work with didn't like my supervisors. Supervisors didn't like me. Only like 1 or 2 co-workers, and co-workers weren't even necessarily in my division, right? So you had a whole department of 50 plus nukes, and then you had, smaller divisions of, let's say, maybe 7 to 10 people. And people in my division, I didn't like them, they didn't like me, right? So it was, mutual feeling, right? But I'm on a submarine, so I'm around them 24/7. And so with that, I'm just dissatisfied. Let's just put it that way. But I'm in a highly skilled job, right? So hence, that's why I got the promotion, got the big re-enlistment bonus. And that's why, I got the fast rank, right? So even though I don't like my job, I'm doing well by military standards, and even by, I would say, my family and friends back home, I was doing very well, right? They were proud of me serving on a, submarine. They didn't necessarily understand what I did, but they were like, hey, he's taking care of himself. He's doing well. He's already E5. You know how long it took me to make E5. He's getting ready to make E6, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so by, I guess you could say, by my standards at the time, or at least by my environment, my peers at the time, I was definitely doing well, right? So that was also kind of weighing on me, but I was having this inner conflict of saying, hey, do I stick this out, right? Even though it sucks, it's something that I can do. And, it pays decent, pays well, right? At least as far as I knew at the time. It pays okay, but I didn't know of anything else that I could do in the civilian world that would pay the same or more, right? They tell me that you could get out and you can operate a civilian nuclear power plant and make more money, right? But my challenge or struggle with that was, I thought to myself, hey, what if I don't like working at a civilian power plant either, right? And so in the Navy, at that time, this is all changed now, right? They've taken this away. But when I was in, you only had to do 20 years and you didn't have to put a dime away for your retirement. And you could retire with a paycheck, 50% of whatever your base pay was. And if you went up to 30 years, then it would be 75% of whatever your base pay was. And you didn't have to put a dime into that, right? That was their retirement system. That was their pension plan back then. So I had the option of, if I did 20 years, whatever my rank was at that time, I'd get 50% of that. And my parents told me that that's a pretty good deal, son. Become an officer. I was on the enlisted side, but, become an officer and, you'll be able to take care of yourself. You'll be fine for life. You'll be all right. And they were right. That's true. That is very true. If you retire as an officer in the military under that pension plan, I don't know about this current one where it's basically a 401k, but the old pension plan, yeah. I mean, you're not going to have a big mansion on the hill, but you will be able to, you will be able to take care of yourself, have a place to stay, have cars, things like that. And you're not going to be starving, right? You're not going to be underneath a bridge. But with that said, again, like I said, you're not going to have a very glamorous lifestyle per se, right? Unless you become like a 05, 06, when you become one of those people that put stars, on your collar. But by then, you're almost 40, 50 plus years old, right? You're an old man, depending on who you talk, but you guys understand what I'm saying, right? You're not a young chicken anymore. You've given your whole life to the military for that, right? So unless you're going to do that, and again, now we're talking 30 years of service, right? Unless you do that, then you're talking about 20 years, you're not going to have that much of a retirement pay. Most of the people I know that are, even as those that retire as officers, they have to work again, even though they retired from the military. So I'm debating on that because I'm like, well, if I don't like the civilian route, I got to start all over again. And that's 30 years under their retirement plan, right? So keep in mind, guys, again, at this time, I am not aware of anything like real estate investing, day trading, buying businesses, or creating a, online stream of revenue. I mean, this stuff does not, well, the online stuff did not exist yet, right? Because like I said, YouTube hadn't even come out yet, right? It didn't even exist. Okay. So, if you're having those thoughts, keep in mind this information and some of the stuff that is available to us or to you now did not exist back then. All right. So you could not have 10 million followers on YouTube and be making $1 million a month or whatever, right? It didn't exist. Okay. So keep that in mind, right? Real estate investing, yeah, obviously it was around then, but it was secret, meaning that only well-to-do people that were investing or had lots of money to invest were even aware of this, right? It was not like coffee shop talk, right? So it wasn't like, you just met some kid on college and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to make $1 million on YouTube and then go buy a couple apartment complexes and live happily ever after. Like, this didn't even exist. It wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even something you could dream about because you weren't even aware of it, right? So you had no idea about all of these investment opportunities or how you can make money. It wasn't, like I said, the information that circulates today was not in circulation like that back then. You couldn't just jump on Google and see that every kid that's 19 years old is driving a Lamborghini. It didn't exist. College athletes today make $200,000-300K a year, whatever they can negotiate. That did not exist. You were thrown in jail almost if you were caught getting money as a college player back then, right? Reggie Bush had to turn in his Heisman as an NFL player because of some money that he received, right? And was later exposed as receiving, right? So, yeah, I think I did a big old loop. And I don't necessarily want to do this big loop. So I'm going to go back. Well, yeah, I'm going to go around. But anyways, yeah. So I'm just sharing with you, like, those things didn't exist like they do now as options, right? So when I'm looking at, getting out, retiring, and as a guy on submarines in the Navy doing 20 years or doing 30 years in the civilian world, it was just like, I don't really like either option, but which one is the better choice, right? So when I did that, I had a conversation with a friend, and this friend was somebody I've been knowing since high school. He ended up in the same field, but he was an officer. So this guy, his name's Marcus, goes by the name Marcus Rose, right? That's not his real full name, but Marcus Rose is what you can call him. But he actually graduated from the Naval Academy, and my parents always told me that was prestigious. My parents always told me that was prestigious because, it was the equivalent of West Point. I don't know if you ever heard of West Point or the Naval Academy. Oh God. Got a whole, I don't know, I guess they got a whole camp or something that they going to set up or something. But yeah, so he was basically who my parents told me I should be. Now, they weren't pointing at him specifically, but what I mean was he had hit all the check marks. Like, he got into the Naval Academy, which is by appointment only. You have to have, I don't know, I think the mayor or senator or whoever write you a letter of recommendation. He got that. It's a full ride scholarship. And so with that, it's just one of those things where you're like, wow, okay, he did everything right? He followed the blueprint. And so he became a nuke like me, but again, he was on the officer side. So he was on pace to become a commanding officer of a submarine. And I don't think you need to be in the military to know that that's a very prestigious position, to be the commanding officer of a nuclear submarine in the Navy, you know? So that was the course he was on. And he also graduated from Naval Academy, so he kind of had the inside track, meaning, you know, if you wanted to kind of play into the old boys club, or if you wanted to say that there was any type of favoritism in the military, then one of those favoritism or one of those tracks would be being a Naval Academy graduate, because now you're in, because you went through a different college experience than, let's say, someone that just came in and graduated from Duke or South Carolina, right? Because you went through the academy, so you had to do a lot of extra stuff that these other officers didn't have to necessarily deal with. They might have just been able to play and party their way through school, whereas in the Naval Academy, you had to do a lot of extracurricular activity because they're grooming you to be an officer in the Navy. So with that, I'm seeing where I think I'm going to go here. So with that, he was like, who my parents thought I should have been, or who they told me I should be, meaning, I should have gone to West Point or, gotten to one of the military academies and then become officer in the military, retired. So, I valued and respected his opinion a lot because, he was who my parents told me the position I should be in. And so one of the things when I talked to Marcus, it was a life-changing conversation for me, was Marcus hated his job as well. So I thought, hey, I'm on the enlisted side, but the officers, these guys are in charge, and, we get our orders. We got to request permission to do things, and they're the ones that approve or disapprove or tell us to wait. And he was like, nah, I hate my job. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I hate my job. And I'm thinking like, yeah, but, you're on track to be a commanding officer of a submarine. You're a black guy. And I mean, there's just, even to this day, 2024, there's not a lot of black commanding officers on submarines or carriers. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a minority. So you're even more so almost 20 years ago, you're talking about 2007, 2008, 2009, right? There was a real low number. That's not to say there's none, because there have been some, but it's just not. I mean, if you want to talk about, let's say, like the NFL and the NBA, I mean, they got dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of, ball players. And NFL is starting to get dozens even coaches, right? But you want to talk about commanding officers of submarines or aircraft carriers, you will not see a bunch of black officers. So anyways, he was on track to become that. So I was thought, man, like, bro, you're there. You headed, you headed to the promised land, right? And he's like, man, I hate it, And essentially, we had a conversation, and not to get too in-depth into it, but, all the things that we're told as to benefits of the military, hey, you got great insurance, you got a retirement, you got food, you'll never be homeless, because even if you go broke, you can still stay in the, all this stuff, he basically just rebutted it, and he's like, so because you're not in the military, that means you can't have good insurance? He's like, when you think of the best medical facilities in the world, do you think of military hospitals, or do you think of military hospitals as like one of the worst care facilities? I was like, yeah, it's actually kind of the worst. It's kind of one of the places that you want to avoid. It's not one of those places that you go, oh my gosh, like, this is so cool. I'm in the military hospital. So if anything, you're like, man, this sucks. I'm in a military hospital, I know in Hawaii, the hospital there is called Tripler. It's like with the T as in tango. But there's a running joke there that they call it Crippler, like with a C as in Charlie, like they cripple you, so they call it Crippler instead of Tripler, right? So he pointed out to me, he's like, man, the best medical facilities, even in the U.S., is not military hospital. I was like, oh, okay, got a point. He was like, okay. He's like, so this retirement that you're talking about, he's like, how many guys do you know that actually like sit home and retire and don't do anything else? I was like, none. They all work a second career. He's like, okay, so if you retire, are you really retired if you got to work a second career? I was like, I guess you bring up another great point. And so it was like, all of a sudden, it was like, wow, wait a minute. My eyes started opening to different, it was just like my eyes were open because that sounded crazy, but I promise you that was like a lizard or something. But anyways, my eyes started opening to these different things, and it's like, wait a minute, like, he's right. Everyone that I knew that retired, they had to work a second job in order to sustain the lifestyle that they wanted, right? So if you retire as E7 or E8, you're making maybe $2,000, $3,000 a month, but $2,000, $3,000 a month, that's just the mortgage payment, right? If you want to drive a nice car, you want to go on vacation, or you want to go out to eat more than once a week or once a month, or you got a family, you got more than one kid, you got to work again. So that's why you see so many of these guys that's retired 20, 25 years, 30 years, and they still got to have a second job, or they still need extra pay because it's not enough. Not enough for them to sit down and live how they want to live without working, is what I'm saying. Can they survive? Yes, they absolutely can survive. They can buy a single wide trailer, buy some type of Chevrolet Impala and drive it for 30 years and put 300, 400,000 miles on it, never get a new car, cook every meal at home, never go out to eat, never travel anywhere. They can survive, never buy any more new clothes, and they could be all right without working again. But if they actually want to go and actually have a nice house, have a couple nice cars, maybe buy a new car every 10 years or so, or every 5 years or so, right? They want to go out to eat a couple times a week. They actually want to buy some new clothes. They actually want to spend time with their kids, or go visit them in college, or go help them buy a house, or go pay for the wedding. All this normal stuff, they're going to have to work another job. So he helped me realize that, and it was like, okay, so we got that retirement out. Now we got the medical coverage and insurance out. He's like, so what else you got for me? And I was like, well, what about the income? He was like, you can see exactly how much you're going to get paid. He was like, you could look right now, decide what rank you want to be, whatever. He's like, you can go look on the chart and see exactly how much you're going to get paid at year 17 or at year 20. You can see it right now. He's like, but you don't know how much you're going to work for it because your salary. He's like, so you got a guaranteed pay, but there's no guarantee on how much you're going to work for that pay. But it's more than likely that you're going to work way harder and way more for that pay than you really think, and then you really want to. And so I was just kind of speechless. And then he took it up another level, as if all of that wasn't enough. He took it to, he said, look at somebody that's 10 years above you, like right now. Like if you were to stay in 10 years from now, if you were the best guy, you were the top guy, find whoever that is that's 10 years ahead of you right now. He said, but don't just look at the rank that they have, right? He's like, look at the lifestyle, look at the work that's required for them. Look at their family life, look at their personal life. Look at the time that they have off, the time that they get to enjoy. Look at their whole lifestyle, what it takes. And he said so clearly, he was like, if you don't want to be that, then why are you taking steps to become that? And for me, it was like a huge slap in the face, because I don't know, it just opened my eyes so wide. It was like, wow. I'm looking at my supervisor, I'm looking at my commanding officer. Maybe CO, maybe. But I'm looking at every night, even if he's not at work, he gets a call at 8 p.m. because they call it CO's call. And they got to tell him what's going on with the boat every single night. So I'm like, no matter where he is, even if he's not on the boat, he's got to make himself available for that 8 o'clock call, period. I'm like, every morning, even though he may not be on the boat like us, he's got an admiral or an actual full bird captain that he's got to answer to about the status of the boat. And so he's got to be at meetings in the squadron at least a couple times a week, if not more. And so I'm like, well, I don't really like that as much. And then I'm also thinking, I'm like, hey, as much as he might not be down here turning wrenches like me, and he may not be sweeping and mopping the floor like me, he's still out to sea every time I'm out to sea. So it's like, wait a minute. When I go out to sea and I got to leave my family, granted, at that time I'm single, but, you know, I still have my parents, my mom and dad. I want to spend time with them. I actually got my cousins, right? Aunt, uncle, all that, you know, family, that extended family I like to spend time with, my brother. I'm like, every time I go out to sea and I leave my little girlfriend at the time or whoever I'm trying to date or chase, right? He leaves his family. He leaves his wife, right? He leaves his children. He's got to go just like I got to go. So I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know that I want to be having to leave when I'm 30 or 40 years old. I don't know that I want to have to go out to sea and be gone for 60, 70 days and not know when I'm coming back when I'm that age. I don't know if I like that, even though being a commanding officer is a very prestigious position. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be that. So I look down, engineer. That guy is stressed to a T. Even though he's lower ranking, that guy's got more pressure on him than the CO, because he's responsible for the entire nuclear department, whether he's there or not. And he's got to answer the commanding officer if anything happens. So he's always worried. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, man, even when this guy is asleep, we're always coming to his bedside, right? His rack on the boat when we're out to sea. And we're waking him up to ask him permission for this, permission for that. Can we do this exercise? Can we do that exercise? Can we shift this line up? Even while he's asleep. And he only gets maybe 3-4 hours of sleep, if that. And then he's up for days sometimes because he's so worried and he's so involved with everything. He doesn't even have a choice to go to sleep. He doesn't even have an opportunity to go to sleep. So he's just got to be wired around the clock. Okay, so I don't want to be that guy. Now look at my supervisor. I know I want to be him. I hate his guts. I know I don't want to be that guy. So dang. Wow. I don't even know what I'm going to do, but I know the answer's clear now. I got to get out of the Navy. But I signed for 8 years, so I still got 4.5 years to go. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I made the decision. I'm getting out. I have no idea what I'm going to do. It's scary to say. But I just know that 10 years from now, I don't want to be my commanding officer. 10 years from now, I don't want to be my supervisor. 10 years from now, I don't want to be on another submarine. That's all I know. What am I going to do? I have no clue. No clue. But I would have to figure it out. So that was my journey. And yeah, when my time came, I separated. I never re-enlisted again. My re-enlistment bonus was like $100,000. When it's time for me to get out, again, it would have been like $50,000, but it would have been taxed. But, you know, nope, I got out like I said I would. And now, let's see, it's 2016, so I'm coming up on 8 years now. Haven't been out. And, you know, I never went back to the recruiter's office. I've never, ever called the recruiter ever again, you know. I never said I wish I would have stayed in. Never, ever, ever. And I have some friends that did stay in, you know. And they're tired now. You know, they still got another 2-3 years left before retirement. And I mean, they're just dead. They're worn out. They're out. And I mean, these are guys that liked submarines, that liked serving, you know. They're still out of energy. They've been worn down to a freaking pulp. So it's just proof that, yeah, I made the right decision. Now, with that, lessons that I've learned on being on the outside. Wow, where do I start? There is so much opportunity in this world that you could just never imagine. Especially now with the internet. You know, like I said, when I was coming up, there was no YouTube, right? There's no Instagram, right? There's no internet filled with people saying, here's how I did it, right? I'm pretty sure you could have bought a course back then, but there were no online courses like there is now. There was no abundance of that stuff. And so I would say, like, for one, replacing your income, it is possible. But let me start off by saying, I don't know that it's always as easy as people think. So if you think you're just gonna get out, get a regular 9-to-5 job that's gonna pay more, that's gonna be better than military, you might be sadly mistaken. I know a lot of my counterparts, it's tougher to get a job. Look at this turtle right here. I don't know if you can see it. All right, there. It's an actual whole turtle. Got my clean kicks on, so I won't jump the fence and get you closer to them. But a lot of these jobs, it's tough to relate direct the way you think, like a one-to-one. So I'll give you an example. So I was a nuclear operator. I had a lot of different skills, but I mean, how many of you know of a nuclear power plant just in your area? Can you name one? So now if you're not going to be a nuclear operator, even though you're smart enough and intelligent enough to do all these other things, how do you translate that language into something an employer can understand? Because they don't understand shifting heat exchangers, right? Or placing main seawater in a discharge lineup, right? They don't understand what that means, right? I was a, engine room supervisor. Okay, what does that mean, right? I was a quality assurance inspector. Okay, great. That sounds good. What is that? Okay, what is it? What? I don't understand, right? So, for one, translating your skills in the military into something that civilians can understand, it's going to be a challenge for you. Two, if you don't want to end up in the military as a civilian, and what I mean by that is, there are some jobs that love military people, retired and active duty or veterans alike, those that are discharging, right? They didn't retire. But what can happen in those places is it ends up being exactly like the military because it's ran by the military. Meaning your supervisor, let's say that you didn't like, that retired after 20 years, 22 years. Well, like you said, he's like I told you, he's got to go work somewhere. So he goes works at, let's say, Company A. And so Company A loves military, so he's a supervisor at Company A. So you get out of the military because you hate the environment, you hate the operation setup or the chain of command setup, and then you go work at Company A, but guess who's the same supervisor that has the same leadership and the same patterns? That old supervisor you hated, he's now a supervisor at Company A. And all his compadres that got out, he got them jobs there as supervisors at Company A. And then now all these guys that are getting out that have a similar skill set that maybe, let's say, didn't retire, but they're now subordinates, right? Or they're under the supervisor at Company A. And so they have a very military work-light environment, even though it's not the military. And so you get out, and because this job understands your military skill sets very easily because they love military, but now you just gotten yourself into a work environment that's exactly like the one you're trying to escape. So that can happen, right? So I would tell you, be very cautious with just thinking that you're going to just get a job in the civilian world that's going to pay more, that's going to have a different environment. If you are not good at translating your military skills and civilian skills. So that would be step one. Step two, I would say, is you really got to say what's your level of self-starting, or what's your ability to self-start. And what I mean by that is, everyone thinks the military creates discipline. It does not. The military has a strong accountability system, and that's different. So what I mean by that, I mean that if you don't show up on time, we're going to dock your pay. If you don't do what we tell you, then we're going to dock your pay, and we're going to restrict your ability to even enjoy what little freedom you do have that's in the military. Meaning, like, if you want to go, let's say, if you want to go out on a Friday night because you're off work, then you don't have to work. Well, the military is going to say, hey, you got to be at the barracks, or you got to be on duty extra, or you can't go out because you're in trouble. So they're going to restrict even what little freedom that you do have. So they have that over your head. And if you act up too crazy and they discharge you from the military, they can give you what's called a less than honorable discharge or a dishonorable discharge. And if you get one of those, then you're going to have a very tough time in life for the rest of your life when it comes to getting a job, because everyone's going to look at you and say, well, if you couldn't adjust to the military and that's easy, you certainly can't adapt here at this job, right? Because they think that the military is easy, you know, compared to their job, right, as far as hiring goes. And then they think that you don't know how to adapt, because how many thousands, how many millions of people have gone to the military, whether they liked it or did not like it, but they got out with the honorable discharge. So why is it that you can't conform well enough to be able to leave with the honorable discharge and do your time, right? So if you have anything less than an honorable discharge, that's going to follow you for your whole life, right? So again, they have all of this stuff hang over your head that's going to cause you to comply and comport yourself in a certain way, whether you want to or not, right? Because you signed on the line, now you just got to do the time and get out, right? So that gets confused with discipline as far as self-discipline. That's not self-discipline. Self-discipline is doing what you don't feel like doing when you're supposed to do it, or when you said you're going to do it, regardless of how you feel. That's self-discipline, right? And knowing that the consequences are not going to be immediate. I'll give you an example, like exercising, right? You're not going to get immediate benefits from any exercise that you do today, right? If you lift weights, your muscles are going to be sore. If you go run, you're going to be out of breath. But that buildup in cardio is not going to show itself today, right? You're not going to get bigger muscles today if you lift today, right? The muscles, if you continue to work out consistently, will show up 2 or 3 months from now, right? You'll start to see some changes. 6 months from now, you'll start to see some changes. Same thing with the cardio. You won't see, a increase in your cardiovascular system ability today, but in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, then you'll start to see some benefit, right? So self-discipline is doing it every single day, or when you said you were going to do it, regardless of how you feel, right? Knowing that if you don't work out today, or if you don't run today, there's not going to necessarily be immediate consequence, right? So if you miss one lift, that's not necessarily going to make or break you. And same thing, if you miss one cardio session, that's not necessarily going to make or break you. But if you do it continuously, that's where the rubber starts to, meet the road, right? That's where you start to see it. And in the military, again, because they have so much tools to motivate you with, it's very easy to say, you know what? I don't feel like having my supervisor yell at me. I don't feel like losing my freedom, meaning, what little time off that you do have. I don't feel like having them control that on top of what they already control. So let me just go ahead and show up on time, right? That's kind of easy. But I'm telling you from personal experience, it's not quite as easy when you don't necessarily have a job, when you're self-employed and when there's no one there waiting for you to clock in or clock out, and you got to do it for yourself. So I'm telling you that because you really got to do a self-evaluation if you can really either be self-motivated, or if you can create your own system of accountability where you have people or you have systems in place to really get you to do what you say you need to do, or what you know you need to do to have the success that you want. So self-discipline, only you can really assess yourself as to whether or not you have what it takes or you don't have what it takes, or whether you got the support you need or don't. All right. The other thing I would tell you, especially on the old pension plan, I don't know that it's worth it with this new pension plan. But under the old one, where you didn't have to put any money in and you just got 50% of your base pay when you retired, I would say if you're not really looking to make a lot of money, and let me explain that. If you're not looking to make a couple $100,000 a year, and I do mean literally $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, then I'm not sure that leaving the military is the best course of action, because you've already put some time in towards retirement. If you know you're just going to be working for the man, whether it's in the military or whether it's civilian world, and you're never going to try to build a business, you're never really going to try to be in sales, you're never really worried or concerned, if you will, about making $200,000, $300,000 a year. That's just something that goes over your head and you don't really think about that. and you don't think you'll ever be thinking about that, that's just beneath you, then I would say stay in. But if you know that you go out here and you look at the Four Seasons, where you see these Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and look at this scenery that I'm at, pretty nice. But if you know you go out here and you look at these Lamborghinis or Ferraris, or you drive to the nicer side of town and you look at these mansions, or you go to these steakhouses, you know, the Ruth Chris, the Eddie V's, the Capitol Grills, and you're like, who are these people that eat here on a regular basis, right? You know, who are these people that stay in these neighborhoods? Who are these people that can afford these cars? Like, who can afford to drive a Bentley, $200,000 car? Well, actually now it's $300,000 car, brand new. You know, who can drive a Rolls Royce? If those are questions that you have on a regular basis, and you go, you know, I would like to be able to drive one of those. You know, I would like to live on this side of the tracks or this neighborhood. You know, I would like to eat at this restaurant on a regular basis. Maybe flying first class is something I would like to do on a regular basis, or maybe even fly private one day, you know, on a regular basis. If those are the type of things that you look at and you go, if I got to work this damn hard, then I want that type of lifestyle, and you're serious about that, and you know you're not going to stop till you get it, then getting out of the military is definitely the best course of action for you. But again, are you willing to do what it takes? And only you can answer that, right? Nobody else can answer that for you, right? But I can tell you, if you can suck it up in the military, then you can do well in business or anything else. But it's not going to be easy at first. And not that it's not necessarily easy, but it's just a skill that you haven't learned yet. It's going to take some time to learn that skill. And you have to realize that all the answers in the military, everybody already has all the answers as far as how to do your job, right? You just got to follow orders, follow instructions. Well, when it comes to building a business or, you know, earning $1 million, there is no necessarily one set course of action or one recipe. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you want to load a gun, there's only a handful of ways you can really load a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that there's 10 ways to load a gun, right? There's maybe 1-2 ways, right? I'm only aware of one way. So it's like, if you're gonna load a gun, you put a bullet in the chamber, right? Or you can put a bullet in the cartridge and then, you know, chamber around, right? That's really about it, you know? But when it comes to, let's say you want to earn $500,000, how many ways can you do it? You can do it with car sales. You can do it as a real estate agent. You can do it as an insurance agent. You can even do it as a job, being a, you know, maybe not even a CEO. You could just be a high-level executive in a company. You could just be a regular salesman selling software, right? You could be a part-time owner of several businesses and earn half, you know, like you can have that much in rental income, you know? So you could either be a partner or you could be owner of several apartment complexes or multiple doors and receive rental income of $500,000. So, you know, so I just went over like 6 different ways that you could earn $500,000. But which one is right for you and which one can you execute on? Only you will know. And only you'll be able to figure that out. So the big difference between the military is that, you know, when I was a nuclear operator, we had a procedure. You do it the same way, same time, you circle and you X. Well, entrepreneurship, as far as being in sales, building business, it's not like that, right? Blockbuster was on top of the world at one point in time. So it was Kodak. Now both of those businesses don't even exist, right? So the way they did it, you can't do it now, right? Because times have changed. But firing a gun, it's the same. That hasn't changed. And that's kind of like an example of how the military is, right? It's like firing a gun. It's very specific, very structured, very rugged, very slow to change, right? And not very big changes happen over the course of a period of time. Whereas on the civilian side, business, how money's earned, it can change quick like that overnight. You know what I'm saying? Like, how quick did Beats by Dre? Remember the headphones, Beats by Dre? How quick did that come and go? Right? It was here, it was popular, and then it was gone. And it made Dre, I think, almost $400 or $500 million in that couple years that it was popping. Remember, 50 Cent had his own headphones, and then there was a couple other artists that copied that movement. And then he had his water with vitamin water, and he made a deal, and so right. So it's gone like that in the civilian world. So it's a lot more adaptation too in the civilian world, right? It's not like the military where, you know, one day you're you're the mechanic and you're turning the wrenches, and then you become a supervisor and you teach somebody else how to do it, and then after that become the supervisor of the supervisor, and now you worry about the whole system, and then one day you're the man in charge, and now you worry about the entire boat, and it's just the same old thing, but you're just at a different level, right? In civilian world, as far as business, the whole thing could change overnight, literally. Like you can literally go from being a mechanic to now they don't even use this stuff anymore, or they change the tools that they utilize. It's a whole different thing. So it's a continual learning of skills. So you got to make sure that that's something that you're willing to commit to, right? And again, like I said, if you're not looking to make a couple $100,000 a year, I'm not sure it's worth getting out, right? Because you could totally stay in, you're going to hate your job, but you'll get some type of check or some type of compensation. Then you get out, you work for a company, and you're not going to necessarily love that either. But again, you'll make a check, you'll get some type of compensation. So I would say some of the questions you got to ask yourself, because especially, I want to say almost all branches deploy. I want to say even Air Force. So if you're deploying, are you okay with missing that time with your family, right? That would be some of the questions I ask, especially if you are married or you've got children. That's even a more important question to ask than if, you're a single guy, you don't have kids. But if you got kids, one thing I can tell you about kids, and I haven't had any of my own, although I've had help raise some teenagers throughout the course of my life, from teenagers to adulthood. I can tell you the time that kids are goes by very quickly. So you can make all the money you want, you can make all the sacrifices you want, but just keep in mind, you would never get that time with kids back ever, no matter what you decide, right? Be it right or wrong. So be very mindful of the sacrifice that you choose with them, because they're never going to be a 3 or 4 year old girl or boy ever again, right? They're never going to run and try to jump in your lap ever again, right? I don't care how much money you didn't make, be very mindful of that sacrifice, right? The time that you can teach them and mold and shape their minds is very limited, right? So be mindful of the sacrifice that you are willing, whether it's staying in or getting out, right? And again, this is a question even for people that are making $1 million a year, or that could make more, but they have to put more time in. And it's a question that only you can answer and only that you can live with. But I can tell you there are men out here that have made millions of dollars. And when I say millions, I mean multiple millions, that some of them regret not spending more time with their kids. And others found ways to spend time with their kids and still make millions of dollars, right? So I've seen both. And there's also some that did not know how to make millions without sacrificing the time. And so they decided to not make the millions and spend the time with their kids. And they don't have any regrets either. So you got to make sure that whatever you decide, I would say really, really put a high emphasis on the time spent with your kids when they are kids. Because once they're teenagers, they're 15, 16 years old, it's just about a wrap, right? They want to hang out with their friends. They're too cool for you. They got other things that they want to do if you haven't spent that time with them up to that point. And then it's too late. You could spend a whole lifetime trying to make up. You will never be able to make up for that childhood that was lost. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I would say ask yourself, how do you feel about deployments coming and going all the time, right? Is that too big of a sacrifice? Also, I would say, again, like Marcus told me, look at where you want to be in 10 years. Look at someone who has the lifestyle or who is the rank that, you would be if you stayed in 10 years and you pushed yourself, or you didn't push yourself, or you just coasted like how you want to coast. Whatever it is, look at where they are and see if that's what you want. Because if you don't want it, then don't go down that path, because you will surely arrive there. And the 10 years are going to go by no matter what. And then lastly, I would encourage you that you don't always have to have the answer. I didn't have the answer. I ended up becoming a real estate agent. I doubt that that'll be my final job or opportunity, right? Because I wouldn't say parlaying, but I'm transitioning into becoming a public speaker. I'm starting to build a personal brand with videos like this, right? And so it's going to build and change. And, one day, like, I'll be done real estate altogether as far as at least being an agent, but I might be an owner of a team, owner of a brokerage, or I might be an investor, meaning I own properties, right, where people are paying rent and I'm getting some of that income or that cash flow, right? So you don't necessarily have to have all the answers and know exactly what you're going to do. But you got to make that decision and you got to commit, and then don't look back. Don't turn around, And I would say you have to be okay with looking silly or being uncomfortable, right? Because when I first got out, I've made more money. I've made over $250,000 in a calendar year since I've gotten out. It took me a while to get there. But in hindsight, it didn't need to take me that long, but it took me a while to become the person that could do that, right? But not that the work itself was necessarily that difficult, because it wasn't. But I wasn't the person that believed in what I was doing and have that self-discipline and accountability that I needed to do what was required, right? But what I will tell you is that for me, a long time, earning that $100,000 was like this invisible ceiling. I just didn't know how to do it. But now that I've done it, I look at it as a floor. Like, I look at it as like, I don't ever want to earn less than $100K in a year ever again. Nor will I. So I'm telling you that because that was once my goal. So I'm telling you, as someone that's a civilian, there's so much money to be made out here, but again, it's going to be not necessarily in a conventional way, meaning it's not necessarily going to be like you just go get a job and you just move up the ranks. That's one way to do it, but I'm just telling you that's one of a dozen ways. It's not the only way, and that's probably one of the tougher ways to do it and least predictable ways, right? But it can't be done that way. So, but you got to be okay, like I said, looking silly, because you're probably not going to jump out and immediately make $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, right? Because you're used to being in the military, you're used to thinking a certain way, you're used to operating a certain way. So you got to drop a lot of that and reprogram your mind, reprogram your brain to think and see opportunities in a totally different way and operate in a totally different way, right? And that's gonna take some adjustment, and you might bump your head a few times, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with getting out, and maybe everything that you thought it was gonna be is not, and you still go, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna tuck my tail in and go run back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'll take one lesser rank, but please let me back in and let me finish this thing out, right? Because some people do that, right? And then they discourage all the guys that are thinking about getting out because they go, hey, I went out there and I failed, so it's probably better for you to stay in, just retire, and then, you'll still be young, you'll only be 35, 37, 40 years old. You can still work another career, blah, 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 blah. But one thing I'll tell you is time is always ticking. You never get the time back. So even though you might only be 38, I'm 36 now, or 40, and yeah, I can confirm that at 36, I do still feel youngest as far as physical ability, in a sense. Like, I still feel like I can run around and chase stuff, but I can tell you it's not the same as 21 for sure. I don't have the energy that I had at 21. I haven't had that since like 25, right? So it's been 10 years. And I can also tell you that life itself will let you know. Like, when I was 20, if I went to go get a burger at Wendy's, the cute girl, right, at the drive-thru, she might have been flirting with me, right? Because she thought I was handsome, I thought she was cute, and we're flirting with each other. Well, I'm here to tell you, at my age now, they all call me sir. There's no flirting. I might look at them and say, hey, she looks kind of cute. She like she might be in college or something. They're not looking at me that way. They look at me as like, sir. So life will tell you that, hey, you're not as young as you might feel, right? And the time is ticking, right? So, it doesn't feel like it, but I'm almost up to my 20-year high school reunion. And to me, that's insane. It doesn't feel like it's been 20 years. But 20 years is enough time to build $1 million business. I can tell you that. And that's enough time to build $100 million business or even $1 billion business. It's been done. So don't let anybody, trick you out by just saying, hey, waste this time, 10 years of your life or 15 years of your life, because you'll still feel young, blah, 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 if that's not what you want. The more time you spend pursuing what it is that you really want, your true goal, your true desire, and try to figure it out and working, the better, because that means the sooner that you'll get there. And the sooner that you get there, the longer that you'll get to enjoy being a rich person, a wealthy person, and it's just better, right? So don't spend half your life, 10 years of your life just because you're young. You don't necessarily appreciate time the way someone that's 50 might appreciate time, right? Or 60. Don't spend 10 years of your life doing something that you hate just because somebody told you that, hey, you'll still be young, right? Or there's no opportunities out there, because there are, right? And so I'm telling you, now as someone that's been a civilian now almost 10 years, I am excited. I'm thankful that I got out, and I don't have regrets, because I know I made the best decisions I could make for myself, given the information that I had. But I can tell you, knowing what I know now, I wish that I either wouldn't have joined the military, or at least wouldn't have re-enlisted. So I would have only done 6 years, right? Instead of 9+ years. So, and I can tell you that there's never a day that I wish I was on duty, or that I was deployed and out to sea turning to. I never wish that ever. And I can tell you that there's so much opportunity. It is still a challenge, it's still a struggle, right? Because business, it goes up and down. It doesn't always go up. Military's got a very set pay structure, and as far as I know, nobody's missed a paycheck yet, right? So, but to me, it's worth it, because I get to go home to my bed every night, right? Instead of somebody else's bed. I'm not deployed anymore. And in real estate, some of the checks that I've received as commission checks, I'm like, wow, I helped somebody sell their home, and I just made more in one check than I did an entire year as a mechanic on submarines, risking my life. Every time we submerge, I'm risking my life, right? There's no guarantee that submarine is going to surface, right? There's no guarantee that World War III or some other, local conflict won't start and won't interrupt while we're out to sea, right? There's no guarantee that the Russians won't attack, and we'll be that first attack. And now we're in the history books that, USS Scranton was attacked by blah, blah, blah submarine, and this is what started this war. Well, that sounds great, except that's my life that was lost in that story, right? So there's no guarantee of that, right? So for me, I don't miss any of that, When I made my $250,000, and I'm working on beyond that now, but when I made that, I didn't go out to sea. I didn't have to stand duty. I didn't have to have anybody cuss me out, I didn't have to wear no freaking uniform, you know what I mean? And I didn't have to walk and talk, per se, a certain way all day, every day. That wasn't who I am, I didn't have to cut my hair a certain way. I still need to be presentable. You still need to be professional, right? But there's nobody walking around saying, hey, man, I see 2 hairs on your beard. You didn't shave, okay? Can you sell my house or not? Right? Can you help me buy the house that I want to buy or not? There's results. It's a big difference, right? So I would tell you that nobody can tell you whether to stay in or get out. That's a personal decision. But I shared with you my story, gave you some food for thought, because again, I was once in your shoes. I was once in the military, and I still had years ahead of me before I got out. And I just thought that day would never, ever come. There was times I felt like I would never get off a submarine, right? Because that was the longest thing I had done in my adult life, right? Up to that point. And so there was a lot of days where I just felt like, man, they're never going to let me off this boat. I'm just going to be here forever. So that day will come, I promise you, where your time will be up. Those 5, 6, 7 years will have passed, or 10 years, and you'll have the opportunity to separate. And only you know what's right for you. Don't let anybody tell you whether you stay in. Don't let anybody dissuade you. Or whether you get out, make it work. But what I will tell you is this. Make sure that you're at peace with your decision, and that you are comfortable doing the work that's required, right? Because if you stay in, there's going to be some tough times. You already know this. But you need to know that you're okay with that, because you made the decision to stay in. And if you get out, then also know that there's going to be tough times, right? Because there's going to be times when things don't go the way you think, and the military might look like, at least for a moment, you might go, man, if I didn't get out, I'd be at this rank making this much by now. Or, oh man, I'd already be in that position, or I'd already be this, supervisory role, and I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily be cleaning or, turning wrenches, because I'd be a supervisor now, or I'd be an officer by now, and I'd be doing this and that. But now I'm starting over, right? So you're going to have those type of moments, I guess, as a civilian, right? Especially beginning, right? Because the longer you've been in, you're going to be a lot higher up. And when you start over as a civilian, you start right back at the bottom, right? So especially if you're not just getting a job. But what I can tell you is you can definitely compensate for that very quickly, very quickly. But you just got to be willing to commit yourself, learn the new skills, and let go of the military life completely, right? And just become a civilian and say, hey, I served at one point in time. I'm done. I'm no longer a Navy sailor, submariner, airman, Army, soldier, whatever. That was that. Now is now. I'm in a new field. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn it out just like I did my skill set in the military, and then I'm going to move forward and make it work, right? And I think if you have that attitude, you'll be fine on the civilian side. And then lastly, just remember that even if you do decide to stay in and retire, if you live long enough, and hopefully you do, then one day you're going to become a civilian again anyway. So whether you retire or you decide to separate before retirement, you're still going to have to come back and deal as being a 100% civilian again anyways, right? So just know that it's coming if you live long enough, right? And so ideally you're going to live past the time you retire in the military, right? So you're still going to have to deal with becoming a civilian one way or the other, right? So it's just a matter of when do you want that to happen, and what choices do you want, and what do you want your lifestyle to look like? Do you want to have to work again after retirement, or do you rather work now and try to figure out how you can make your couple million or your couple $100,000, and how to invest that wisely and enjoy more of your time along the way, right? Because you're still going to have to work, you're still going to have to produce, still going to have to figure out how to take care of yourself, but you get to decide, right? So guys, hopefully that helps. I know today's video is a little bit different, but again, just wanted to share, and let me know your comments, let me know your thoughts. If you do have questions, feel free to comment, let me know. I'll be happy to answer as best I can. I can also put you in touch with people because, again, having been in the Navy, I know some guys that are still in. I know some guys I serve with now that are commanding officers of submarines. It's crazy to think about. I know some guys that are high-ranking officers on submarines. I know some guys that have retired from the military on the enlisted side as E9s, at 30 years. I know some guys that's retired as 04, 05s from the military after 30 years, right? So I know some high-ranking guys that's retired, and I can tell you unequivocally, with almost one or two exceptions, you will have to work again, even if you reach that high-ranking position as an E9 and you do 30 years, or if you reach that high-ranking position as an 04 at 30 years, and I'm talking about guys that are debt-free, that, save their money, wipe the books, don't have any debt. I'm telling you, you got a family, you want any type of quality of life, you will have to work again, even after retirement, even after you make 04, 05, and you've done 30 years of service. I'm telling you, without a shadow of a doubt. So just keep that in mind. But if you want me to put you in touch with these people, make that connection so you can kind of pick their brains, see what the retirement's like, I'd be happy to do that. If you want to talk to some guys that are, further ahead, I can make that connection on Facebook. You can, message back and forth, because obviously they're still active duty, so they don't have that much time, but you can email back and forth, and they can respond to emails and let you know what they're going through, what they recommend. And I know guys that started off as officers. I know guys that started off as enlisted. I know guys that are warrant officers as well, that were high-ranking enlisted, E7s, E8s, and then went on to become officers. So whatever you got in the military, I know people that are at that rank, or that have been that rank, and that are retired or still active. So I can put you in touch with them and help you, if that will, help you with your decision making. Because again, it's a life changer. Whether you say yes or no, whether you stay in or retire, it's definitely a life changer. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, but it's one of those decisions that it's kind of like marriage, right? You don't get to, it's definitely going to permanently affect your life, right? So you've been married, I think if more than a year or something, it's definitely going to be a life changer, right? And same thing, if you decide to retire or if you separate, that's definitely going to be a life changer, and that's going to be a story of your life, and you never get to go back and undo it or redo it, right? So you can get married 4, 5, 6 times, somebody different, you know, but divorce is costly. But I would say the military commitment is even more so, because again, it's not like you get to just do 1 year or 1 week and say that, oh, I made a mistake. It's like, no, you got to sign for at least, what, 2, 3, 4 years at least, or extend for at least a year of your life, right? Once you've already done 6 or 7 or 8, you know? So it definitely is a commitment. It definitely is a life changer. All right, guys, till the next video. Sorry this was a little bit longer, but I think it was warranted just based on the topic and covering everything that I think we needed to cover, and really helping you see the light and helping you consider some things that you may not have been able to see before, so you can make your decision. All right, take care.